Hi writers, I'm Linda Writes for Kids, and today we're going to talk about critique groups, how to find one or how to build one, and some things to consider when doing so. So stick right with me, we'll be right back. I think I will always say that the best thing I ever did for my writing was to find a great critique group. Now, what is a critique group exactly? It's a group of writers who work together to share their work and give constructive feedback to the writer. Critique groups can come in all shapes and sizes. They can be in-person groups that meet regularly. They can be online groups that meet when they can online. And that was what my first critique group was. I was in a group that met online. We didn't actually meet. We logged in when we had time. We sent an email with our feedback, and that worked perfectly for me. At the time, I had young children, and I had a husband who was gone a lot, and I just didn't feel that I had the freedom to be able to commit to regular meetings at that time in my life. So what was going to work best for me was an online critique group. That way, it might be 11 o'clock at night when I get on my email and I see what someone has submitted, and I can send my feedback to them then, or print it and work on it and send it later. Whatever worked for my family's schedule rather than really for me. So that's why I chose, at that time in my life, an online critique group, and it was fabulous. It still is. Later, as I became older and an empty nester, I also added an in-person critique group too. And that's a lot of fun. It's great to see other people on a regular basis. That, writing can be a very solitary profession and experience, and so having a monthly meeting where you meet with other writers who know the struggles of writing and who are sharing their struggles and are supporting each other can be a very wonderful thing. So today I have both an online group and a in-person critique group. So how exactly do you go about finding a critique group? The way to do that is to begin connecting with people in the industry, whether it's at conferences or through trade organizations. For Kidlit authors, the trade organization that most everyone is a member of is SCBWI. It stands for the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And even if you don't join them, they have a message board that writers can be a part of without being a member of the organization. So my first online group, I was a member of SCBWI, and I did go on message boards there, and that is how I hooked up with my very first group. And someone was organizing it, and I asked to be a part of it, and then we all kind of submitted work to everyone in the group. And we decided that we were good with working with each other. We felt like I can work with all these other people. And so that's how we got that group started. You want to consider the size of your group. My first online group was 6 total, and the group that I'm in now is 7, and that's a pretty good size. 5 to 7 is a pretty good size, because remember, you're going to need to be reading other people's work and putting together critiques for them in writing so that they get that feedback from you. So if you get it too big, you're going to find that it can become undoable pretty quickly. The other thing that tends to happen is that once you have a group established, when you're talking to other writers about your critique group, you'll get people who would like to join. And it would be awesome to have all the people out there in your group, all the people that you like and whose work you admire. And that would be awesome, but I think a critique group can get out of hand pretty quickly if you do that. So it's good to kind of set parameters on the size of your group. I think it's really helpful to have other people in your group who work within the genre you're working in. However, I will say this, in my in-person group, there is a woman there who does not write children's literature. The rest of us do. She does not write for children. She actually writes memoir and adult nonfiction, and she is a really valuable part of our group. She also teaches creative writing at a major university, and so she knows her writing. So even though you may have some people in your group that are not in your genre, if they are super awesome at editing and critiquing and thinking about literary works, maybe in a different way than you do, that can actually be a real benefit to your group. So while it's probably good to have mostly people who work within your genre, good writing is good writing. And if you find someone who's an awesome editor and really understands literature and can do thoughtful critiques, they may be a real valuable asset to you as well. One thing that I think that you are looking for in your critique group are people who are equally serious as you as writers. You want like-minded people. If you're in a group of people that just consider it a hobby that they do now and then, first of all, they're probably not going to be looking for a critique group. But if you were to find that, let's say, and you are dead serious about this business and really wanting to push forward, that might not be a great fit for you. So one thing that you want to find is people, other people who are as serious about the craft as you are. I think it could be helpful also to find people who are at roughly the same stage in their writing profession as you are. If you had a group of people who were absolutely just getting started and learning so much of the basics, and then you had a New York Times bestseller in the group, that bestseller could offer a lot of great feedback to the other people, but what can you offer that person? So it needs to be very much a mutually beneficial relationship within the critique group where everybody is giving and everyone is getting good quality in return. So kind of look out for that as well. Also, in an ideal world, you are going to find that your critique group members have different strengths from each other. And I think that's pretty natural to find that. But it really is a huge benefit when different people have different strengths. There is one person in my in-person critique group who I think everyone in the world would say is an awesome plotter. So she has insights on moving the story along and plot and pacing that is invaluable to the rest of us. Someone else might, be the grammar guru that, notices any comma that's out of place or, any problems at all. I think that one of my strengths personally is being able to find consistencies in a manuscript. I'm the person who will say, oh, well, here he said that and then he wiped this window, but 2 pages back he wiped a window also. So maybe, switch it up a little bit. So that's I think one of my strengths is finding those little picky replications or that sort of a thing. In my first group, the online group, there was one member of our group who was one of those people that just loves everything about life. She just finds joy in everything. And so one day when I submitted a story and she came back and instead of saying, I love it, now she did have great editorial comments that she could give us despite the fact that she loved pretty much everything. She was, very good at editing and thinking through themes. She also was excellent in child development, so as children's authors that was really beneficial to us. But one day I submitted something and she came back and instead of saying I love it, she said, I really worry about kids reading this because the story was kind of hard. It was about an animal and some hard things that it was a true story, it was nonfiction, but she just thought it was too hard for kids. And so I had to take a big step backwards and say, you know what, if she doesn't love it, I'm probably on the wrong track with this one. I never did finish that story. I never did send it anywhere because I decided she's really right. It really probably was too worrisome for most kids. And so that was one of her strengths, was to be able to, see the beauty in everything. And that time when she didn't, I knew I was on the wrong track. I also think that it makes a lot of sense to set up some kind of rules and parameters around your critique group. For example, how many pages can a writer submit each time? if you have somebody who's submitting, 5 chapters of their novel every other week, or even once a month, it can be too much. I think a good limit is like about 10 pages, because if you have multiple people submitting at one time, it can be a lot to read and give feedback on, and you want to give thoughtful feedback. So you can't necessarily devote hours and hours and hours to this. So you want people to submit things that are really going to be doable for the other members of the group. So setting a page limit is smart. In the first critique group I had, we set a word count. And in the one I'm in now, we have more of a page limit, because sometimes, the word count, you're like, yeah, but there's like 3 more words, in that paragraph before I'm at a good stopping place. So, and then of course we would just submit that. With the idea that you can stop at whatever the word limit was if you need to. Anyway, I think it's smart to set some sort of parameters on how big of a chunk you're going to submit each time. That just makes sense, so that people can budget their time. The other thing that I think is really worth considering is how much time do you need between when you submit to when writers are expected to send feedback. And again, this depends on the busyness of your group and what works for the group. But usually I would say I like to have at least a week from when I receive something until I have to be ready to have critiqued it. We're just busy people, and we want to do it. We want to do it well. We want to give thoughtful feedback, but we've got to have the time to do it. So having someone submit, 25 pages the night before the group meets that's just a non-starter for me. I just can't do it. So setting that kind of parameter is, I think, also really valuable. Okay, and finally, and this is one that I feel very, very strongly about, you need to have some kind of agreement amongst yourselves on what stage in the process you will be submitting things. And what I mean by that is, are you going to submit first draft material, or are you going to wait until it's polished? I think for myself personally, it is really not doable to do line by lines on a first draft. First of all, it's going to change so much between that first draft and what that writer ends up ready to submit to an editor that most of your time and energy spent on critiquing that is really going to be wasted, and when none of us have time to waste. Second of all, I think it's disrespectful for writers to expect that their critique group will do the work that they can already do on their own. I mean, I just think that's disrespectful of their time, so I don't really agree with doing that. My feeling about critique groups has always been that the writer writes the work, they get it as absolutely polished as they can, and when they are out of ideas on how to make this better, that's when it goes to the critique group for other people's eyes and thoughts. What did I miss? What do you see here that I could improve on? My idea is that we do our best work, and we go to the critique group to say, is there anybody that has any ideas on how to take it up a notch? Because that's what we want. We want our absolute best work out there. So I believe in polishing it until we're just done, and then going out there to the critique group to get further ideas on how we can take it up a notch and make it even better, or what did we miss, or what did we just not think about. Any of those things. What's clunky in it? Where was the description, not its best? The biggest thing is, what happened as you were reading? Where did you get pulled out of the story? We want our readers to be immersed in the story. So where were you in the manuscript when you suddenly went, oh, I do wonder about those socks, or something completely, not the story. So that's a really critical place to have a critique group looking at your work. Okay, so that online critique group that I started with, the way we worked it was this. We had 6 authors. We split ourselves up into 3 groups of 2. So 2 people would submit, let me try to remember how we did it when we were being really organized about it. 2 writers would submit, I think, at the end of the week, and then The following, like Friday, we would have those 2 critiques turned in to the rest of the group, and we shared them with everyone, and that way we're learning, like, oh, Chrissy saw this, I need to remember that, you know, that she noticed this part, or, you know, so we were all learning from each other's critiques. And then the day that we turned our critiques in was the day that the next 2 people would submit. So we constantly had 2 critiques in process, and we each submitted once a month and sometimes twice a month, depending on how those 3 weeks rolled out. So that's how we did that. Today, with the online critique group that I'm in, we submit once a month, and we submit 1 week ahead, and then we meet the following Friday, usually, a date that everybody can work into their schedule, and we meet once a month, a week later, and we give in-person critiques, but we also give on-paper critiques or emailed, so that we can go back and, you know, writers can go back and look at what everybody said. One last note on critique groups. It takes people some time sometimes to find the right group. I talked about my online group, and there were several people in that group who had been in other groups that just were not a good fit for them. It just wasn't working for them. So if you find that you get involved in a critique group and it's not, you know, give it a little bit of time, it's not working for you, gracefully bow out and look for another one, because finding the right critique group can take time, but it is priceless. So I hope that you each can find the right place for you if you're not already there. If you are already there, think about what I said about kind of setting those rules and parameters. I think it can make things go a lot more smoothly if people know kind of, you know, what is acceptable and what is maybe overstepping a little bit or asking too much of the others. So that can make things go a little more smoothly as well. So that is my long and short of my experiences in critique groups and my opinions about them. I hope this was helpful to you. If so, give me a thumbs up, please. And please hit the subscribe button and the bell. That helps to support my channel so that I can continue doing these videos for you. I would love to connect with you. You can find me on Twitter. You can leave comments below, and we can get to know each other there as well. So until next time, happy writing.